Let us understand ABC costing through an example. A company manufactures two products, product A, product B. The company incurs 1 lakh as an overheads and traditional cost driver is machine hours. In case of product A, the machine hours are 2000 hours. In case of product B, the machine hours are 1000 machine hours. So as we are distributing overheads in the machine hour rate basis, so the machine hour rate is 33.333. If the overheads are distributed in the traditional approach, then the overhead distribution must be, in case of product A, 66,666, and in case of product B, 33,333. Let us understand what does ABC costing means and how it provides an accurate basis of distributing overheads. Let us understand. ABC costing identifies various activities that consume resources and allocate cost based on the actual consumption of these activities. Let us understand with an example. For suppose setup cost is 40,000 rupees and quality control cost is 60,000 rupees. But in product A, setup cost is 60% and in product B, setup cost is 40%, and quality control cost in product A is 40% and quality control cost of product B is 60%. So once we identified the activities done in each product, we can allocate the overheads based on the activities. Let's understand. In case of product A, setup cost is 60% of total setup cost, which is 24,000, and in case of quality control cost is 40% of the total quality control cost, makes the total cost to be 48,000. In case of product B, we have setup cost 40% of total setup cost and 60% of total quality control cost, which gives rise to setup cost is 16,000 and quality control cost is 36,000. The total cost is 52,000. As we know that in traditional costing, irrespective of the activities done by the enterprise on a particular product, the overheads are distributed on a single basis, either it may be direct labor hours or machine hours. But in case of activity based costing, it identifies various activities that consume resources and allocate cost based on the actual consumption of these activities. I think ABC costing is the accurate and best way to allocate overheads to the products, as the activities done by an enterprise on various products may differ. So once these activities are identified, and for those activities how much resources are consumed, if that is known, we can easily allocate the overheads. As in case of allocating cost to the particular product, we need to choose a accurate basis rather than allocating the cost on equitable basis, like choosing a particular basis like machine hours and direct labor hours. Let us understand the requirement of the question. Calculate the cost per unit of each product using traditional method of absorbing all the production overheads on the basis of machine hours. Let's understand what is the importance of calculation of cost per unit. Is to ascertain the best price at which a product can be sold. Okay. Allocating cost through traditional method. Traditional costing means allocating overheads among the products on a single basis like machine hours and direct labor hours. Now let us understand why traditional method is not accurate. For suppose a company has an overheads related to setup cost and quality control cost is rupees 10 lakhs, in which setup cost is related to 6 lakhs and quality control cost is 4 lakhs. The company produces two watches, one is Rolex and second one is Rado. The company produces in a month 1500 pieces of Rolex watch and 1000 pieces of Rado watch, and the machine hours incurred for Rolex watch is 3000 hours and the machine hours incurred for Rado watch is 1000 hours. So allocation of overheads on the basis of machine hours can be done by calculating per machine hour cost or overhead recovery rate, which can be calculated as total overheads divided by the basis, which is machine hours, or total machine hours, which is equal to 10 lakhs divided by 4000, which is 250 rupees per hour. As we know that overhead recovery rate is 250 rupees, we'll multiply with the machine hours to allocate the overheads on the basis of machine hours. So 3000 into 250 rupees will get 7,50,000. 250 rupees into 1000 hours will get 2,50,000. This was the first approach of allocating overheads to the products. The second approach is In this, we know the activities are done in the ratio. For example, same question, if the setup cost incurred for Rolex is 60% of the total setup cost and setup cost incurred for Rado watch is 40% of total setup cost, and coming to quality control cost, 20% of total quality control cost was incurred on Rolex watches and 80% of total quality control cost was incurred on Rado watches. As we know that setup cost is equal to 6 lakhs and quality control cost is 4 lakhs, we can allocate the overheads on the basis of the proportion the activity is done to a product. Let us understand what are the activities. Activities are like, for example, setting up of a machinery, quality control activities, inspection activities, etc. Now let's bifurcate the overheads. In case of Rolex, setup cost is 60%, which is 3,60,000. In case of Rado watch, it is 40%, which is 6 lakhs into 40%, which is 2,40,000. In case of quality control cost, 20% of 4 lakhs, which is 80,000, and 80% of 4 lakhs, which is 3,20,000. The total overhead under this approach in case of Rolex watch is 4,40,000 and in case of Rado watch is 5,60,000. Now let's calculate per unit cost. In case of Rolex, 4,40,000 divided by 1500 pieces, we got 293.33 rupees. In case of Rado watch, 5,60,000 is divided by 1000 pieces, we got 560 rupees. So we can see vast differences between allocation of overheads between traditional method and ABC costing. Now there is a common sense point here. If the overheads are relating to setup cost and quality control, the overheads must be allocated on the basis of proportion of such activity done on a particular product rather than allocating overheads on a unrelated basis. In our scenario, if the overheads are relating to setup and quality control, the overheads must be apportioned on the basis of percentage of the activities done to a particular product rather than a single basis, which is machine hour basis. In this case, per unit price of a product in traditional approach is completely different that of ABC costing. In this case, as a company, for suppose, know that Rado watches need a different setup for their each batch of watches, and company must incur high quality control on Rado watches as they produce only limited stock edition in a year as compared to Rolex watches. So charging the overheads on the basis of ABC costing will give a fair price of a product for both the companies and customers rather than charging unrelated prices based on traditional approach. Let us start with statement showing cost per unit under traditional method. As we know that direct materials and direct labor hours can be ascertained per unit basis, we can write directly the amount. In case of production overheads, as we know that overhead recovery rate is given, which is 6 rupees, and we also know that machine hours per each product we can multiply and we can write the amounts, so we'll get cost per unit easily. But in second case, statement showing under cost per unit in the activity based costing, direct material per unit can be ascertained and can be written the amounts directly, and direct labor cost, which is direct labor hours per unit into hourly rate, we can ascertain and write the amounts. But in case of overheads, we need to be careful and we need to analyze by making relevant working notes. Firstly, we need to calculate total production overheads. As we know that the machine hour per unit is given, which is 10, 18 and 14, and units produced is also given. So we know that total machine hours is 30,000 for product P, 90,000 for product Q, 2,80,000 for product R. As we know that total machine hours is 4 lakh hours, we have a formula of overhead recovery rate is equal to total overheads divided by total machine hours. As we know the information of overhead recovery rate as well as total machine hours, we can multiply them and we can ascertain total production overheads, which is 4 lakhs into 6 is 24 lakhs. As we know that total production overheads is 24 lakhs, we can allocate the total production overheads in the proportion as 20% of production overheads is setup cost, which is 4,80,000. 40% of total production overheads is inspection cost, which is 9,60,000. 10% of total production overheads is purchase order cost, which is 2,40,000. 30% of total production overheads is machine operating cost, which is 7,20,000. After we have ascertained activity related cost, we shall calculate number of batches. Why we will calculate number of batches? Number of batches are calculated to know the number of setups. For example, in this case, product P has a batch size of 150 units, which means that firstly, when we set up a machine, the machine has a capacity to produce 150 units and it will stop at 150th unit. After the 150th unit, we need to set up once again in order to produce next 150 units. So the setups are related to number of batches of a single product. In the same way, we know that number of orders per batch, and we also know that number of batch per product. If we'll multiply, we'll get total purchase orders for a product. If we'll add all those, we'll get total number of purchase orders. In the same way, inspections. Now let us calculate per setup cost, which can be ascertained by total setup cost divided by number of setups, which is 9,600. In case of per inspection cost, total inspection cost divided by number of inspections will get 4,800 per inspection cost. In case of purchase orders, per purchase order cost can be ascertained by total purchase ordering cost divided by number of purchase orders. We'll get 750 per purchase order. In the same way, we'll ascertain per machine hour rate. Now we need to calculate machine related cost per product. As we know that machine hours for product PQR are given, is multiplied with the machine hour rate, will get machine operating related cost for a product. In the same way, setup cost, in the same way, inspection cost, in the same way, purchase order cost. So we'll get total overheads per product. If divided by production in units of a particular product, we'll get cost per unit of a particular product.